Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home. Welcome everybody to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So happy to have you here today. You are going to love my guest. He's awesome. But before we get into that, I just want to say, have you left your iTunes review yet? I ask you please to do so. And as a thanks, you'll be entered into a contest for this awesome t-shirt. If you're watching, I'm going to hold it up. If you're not watching, if you're listening instead, it says eat in peace. And who doesn't want to eat in peace? It's this awesome t-shirt. You will be entered to win one of two of these. Just leave a review before September 15th, please. You'll get that t-shirt and a signed copy of my husband's book, Love Notes from Hell, as well as my book, Heal Your Hunger, 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now. So that's a cool care package you will get, and you can choose your size of t-shirt, but this is an awesome t-shirt. It's valued at about $35 from Whole Foods, and I have one myself because I love it, and it's soft, and it's just a beautiful, wonderful message to carry around. So, but the bigger point here is that without your help, we can't reach the people who are suffering with food and weight issues. You know, people are trying time and time again to diet and to just keep chasing their tail, and they're getting nowhere, and they have no idea there's a solution. They have no idea that emotional eating is really their problem, and their inability to, cope with their feelings except by diving into the food. So I want to help them, and I want your help, and I need your help. So you found this wonderful home for emotional eaters, and let's share it with other people, and your review will actually help me do that. So thank you for leaving a meaningful review, not just a few words, but really put some thought into it. What does this show mean for you? Why is it that you listen time and time again? What draws you to the show? What pearls do you get from the show, or how does it affect your life? Leave a review about that, and we will choose the 2 top meaningful reviews and send you a care package. So thank you in advance for that. I really, really appreciate it. So on to my awesome guest here. Now, Jeff Faldalen is an acceleration coach, the founder of New Concept Coaching and the Potential Zone podcast. So he's a 2-time bestselling author and has extensive understanding of breaking through negative beliefs and limitations. So you can see why I wanted him to come on my show. He's, that's all good stuff that I just read to you, but truthfully, the guy is a tour de force. He is really just high energy, high impact, high acceleration, and that's what he does for people. And I just think that his experience from his past, which I'll ask him about, as well as his amazing training and tools that he uses to help people break through their limiting beliefs and myths, it can be super helpful for you as well, and for me. So I'm psyched to talk to him. Jeff, that is your cue. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tricia. It's great to be here. I'm really, really excited about this.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Thank you so much. And let's start with your story, because it is an impactful one, and I want people to hear where you come from and how it is that you came to do what you do.
It started back when I was 19, and woke up in the hospital one day and had a nurse look over me, and she says, "Do you know where you're at?" And I had no idea where I was at, and she says, "Do you know how you got here?" And that question changed the direction of the rest of my life. And what had happened was I was in a very, very serious car accident that I shouldn't have walked away from. Ended up fracturing my neck in multiple places, compound fractured my femur, and was on a healing journey. It was going to take me about a year for myself to recover, but that was actually not the most devastating part of that car accident. The most devastating part of that car accident was that my sister was in that car, and she was across the street fighting for her life. And it really sobered me up to really become aware of what my behavior was doing to other people, because, I'd had lots and lots of people telling me, "Jeff, you're going to kill somebody drinking and driving, whatever." And at that point in my life, if it's their time to go, it's their time to go. And I as I started reflecting back, and I'm happy to say my sister and I are both healthy and, have a great relationship today. I love my sister very much, but it took what I did to her for me to really look at what I was doing with my life and with the direction of my life. And prior to that car accident, I could say it was pretty fair to say that I hated myself. I hated my life, had a lot of pain inside and didn't realize the extent of it. And that's what caught my attention and said I could never do this to somebody I love again. So it started a life obsession of how to step into a higher quality of life and be able to deal with these things called emotions.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, and definitely a sobering one. And I hope that began your journey of sobriety. It did, right?
Yes, yeah. It took about 4 years for me to get clean, but yeah, it was the beginning point, certainly.
Yeah, that's when we can put those terrible situations, to use in our lives and use it as that pivot point to make a change and really turn over a new leaf. That's a beautiful thing. And I believe that's probably why we draw these circumstances into our lives, is so that we can, get that prompting that we really need, and not only need, but I believe yearn for in our heart of hearts. I mean, nobody wants to destroy themselves with alcohol or with car wrecks or, destructive living. I think, that's God made us to thrive. And when we're not thriving, I think in our heart of hearts, we crave a change, but we don't know how to bring it about. And sometimes we have to draw really severe circumstances into our life so that we will, get that wake up call. So it sounds like that was your wake up call for sure.
Yes, it was. And it was one of those times in my life, not knowing what happened then really, but looking back on it now, it's me recognizing of how our values drive us, right? And at that point, I didn't value life. I didn't value myself. And because of that, my behavior reflected that. And it took almost destroying someone I valued very much for me to wake up and go, wow, this is what's happening here.
Yeah, and it might not have even happened had she not been in the car. I mean, when we hate ourselves, our own self-destruction doesn't always get our attention because we destroy ourselves for years, right, without making a change. And I know with food, I did the same thing. I was eating for my destruction. And so, I think if we ate for somebody else's destruction, it might wake us up sooner, rather than later. So that sounds like that's exactly what happened for you.
Yeah. And it was, really getting in touch with the fact that our lives impact other people's lives. And we're so caught up in our own pain and our own existence and things like that we don't even, we're just, I used to say this phrase, I was one of those kind of people that would jump in a rut and decorate it. I just loved being there so much and so caught up into my story that I've created for myself that I didn't even recognize what I was doing to other people. And, I remember when I was in treatment, and my grandma sat across from me and just absolutely lost it. I was the oldest grandchild, and she sat across from me crying her eyes out how she had lost her youngest son to drinking and driving. And it didn't faze me. I was just so detached from my feelings. Had girlfriends sit down, how I'd done all the things I'd done to her. None of it fazed me. As soon as my sister sat down in that chair, I lost it. I mean, it was just, that was that moment that just went, wow, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it anymore.
Wow, I'm so glad that she made it out, and is healthy. Yep. So that's beautiful in terms of what you did to turn your life around and how different your life is today. So talk about your, sort of your journey of self-exploration and what you learned along the way.
The journey of self-exploration. Yeah, it's been, it's been interesting. The older that I get, the more my values change, right? And it's about learning how, the more mature we become, the more it becomes about making an impact in this world. And there were so many things that I had been conditioned to believe about myself in my childhood that I didn't know how to deal with it. And, the thing about the car accident, I used to have hair down to my shoulders. And when I was 26,
wait, let me interrupt. For those who aren't watching this, he has no hair now, like not short hair. He has no hair.
Yep. I shaved my head.
Beautiful bald head.
Yeah. I've been shaving my head since I was about 26. But when I started losing my hair, I became very suicidal. I mean, I was just like, holy cow, how am I going to deal with this? Very vain, didn't think any women would want me, blah, 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 all this stuff. But what I didn't really understand was what that hair was covering up. And what that hair was covering up was a 12-inch scar down the back of my neck that was associated to that car accident. And the biggest thing for me to overcome in this journey of self-discovery was learning to deal with shame. And shame just, as you know, shame is the lowest form of consciousness there is. And when we're full of shame, we end up attracting dark situations into our lives. And it's a very, very, very vulnerable state that allows us to just get our butts kicked. And I carried that shame for probably close to 2 decades before I really got to the place of recognizing that, our behavior is designed to be used as a barometer. And if we can look at our behavior objectively and not get attached to it, of just recognizing that our unconscious mind is creating this behavior because it believes this is what it wants us to do. So if you look at my story, I hated myself. Okay, well, let's create a behavior that destroys you, right? And really looking at that. So what has allowed me to let go of that is that was part of the process that got me to where I'm at today. And me hanging on to the shame is inviting things that are not conducive to my potential, the potential of rising up to the most that I can be. And, I remember I used to be a jewelry designer. And I was down at this TV station for a client that I was working with. And it's to drive this point home of all behavior has a positive intention. Now, when I first heard that, we've all heard people are doing the best they can with what they have. And I was just like, that's all cool and fine and dandy. But some of the things that have happened to me, how do I rationalize that in my head? I've been molested, many different things. But I was just like, how does that happen? And then I started getting into the psychology of how behavior comes to be and why we do the destructive things we do. And one of the things was me coming around to terms with this thing about being molested. Again, the shame thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I come up to this thing of behavior is an adaptation. All behavior has a positive intention. I'm like, how can I validate that? So why don't I just go to the furthest, most heinous thing that's ever happened to me and wrap that around that? Well, I was watching this episode at this place where I was with this future client of mine, and they were part of a TV station. Well, it was Oprah. Oprah came on, and the episode was in regards to a pedophile. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting. So she has this pedophile come on, and her other guest was the victim of that pedophile. It was would have been his stepdaughter. And so obviously I got my attention of like, holy cow, how do you do this? And this is the first time they had seen each other since he had been in prison or got released out of prison. And he sat down, and she's now a young woman. She asks him, why did you do that to me? And I was just, I was like captivated, like, how is this guy going to answer this? National TV, everything. And she goes, I loved you. I trusted you. I worshiped you. You were my best friend. You were the man in my life that made all the difference in me, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, that's why. That's why I molested you. And because he says, I was afraid of rejection. I was insecure, and I knew you wouldn't reject me. And it was like a light bulb went off inside of me of like, this isn't personal. This is not personal for me anymore. Right. And having, that's some of the biggest things with emotion is we take things on personal, but recognizing the fact that when we take them personally and we feel those emotions, it's because that emotion or that experience wants to be released. right? But we can go, oh, I don't like this, and push it back down by eating, by pornography, by drinking, by cheating, by whatever. Or we can learn to go through that process and be able to release that emotion and step into, as you said, our fullest potential, how our Creator designed us. I mean, we were designed to walk out our fullest potential if we have the awareness of what holds us back. So that's been some of my journey.
That's amazing. God, I'm glad you shared that. And I didn't know that about the molestation part. And that is so germane to emotional eaters, because I know I experienced, sexual abuse as a kid, and so many people who are burying their emotions with food are bearing that particular experience, especially, and all the host of emotions that go along with it. So that's really amazing. And it is empowering to know it's not personal, whatever the trauma is, that's not personal. And that was part of my healing journey, is to realize that hurt people, and that, whoever, the person who took out their own troubles on me were troubled. That person was troubled and didn't know how to deal with it, didn't have proper avenues for dealing and healing. And so, I was the victim of that more than anything, of somebody who just didn't know where to put those feelings. So, and that helps a lot to see that. That helps so much to be free from the blame and the anger and all that, and the shame, is to have that new perspective. And that certainly helped me so much, is to begin to have compassion for this person as somebody who they could not help themselves. They did not have options at their fingertips and it's, it just was an unfortunate thing. And I'm sure you'll probably understand this, and feel this way too, is that is part of my journey. And that's one of my gifts that I can offer other people, is having been through that and knowing exactly what that's about and how to heal from it. So we're turning these unfortunate situations into, gifts that we can offer the world.
Yeah. And, and the other part, through this journey, I heard a term that it says one of the greatest skills that you can develop is how to accelerate your life. And for me, what that means is being able to let go of the things that hold me back from stepping into what it is that I want to step into. And like we'd mentioned, is that the story, see, the way I look at things, people look at feelings as good and bad, and that's not an accurate assessment. There's negative feelings and there's positive feelings, just like a battery. There's a positive and a negative part of that. And there's negative feelings that invite things that are unhealthy for us into our lives. And the positive feelings is a higher frequency, and it burns away the negative feelings. And I like to look at them like personalities. Shame doesn't want to go away. Shame doesn't want to go away. And shame is going to, I heard this statement from one of my coaches, and it just absolutely rocked my world when I first heard it. And that is, darkness has to be seductive to be invited in. And of course, what most people think when they hear the word seductive, they think sexual or something like that. But seduction is nothing more than portraying to be something that you're not. And so shame has to be seductive for us to invite it into our consciousness, and says, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to make it so that you won't step out and take risk. I'm going to make it so that you and I are going to be, and we end up developing this relationship with this shame. And it's something we've created in our psychic. So when there's something that comes to us and says, hey, you can let that go, and you can step into your fullest potential, and you can be successful, and you can live an amazing, vibrant, healthy, abundant life, it challenges this relationship that we've had with this shame. And it's really being able to acknowledge it and understand that shame is doing what shame is supposed to be doing. Just like our ego is doing what it's supposed to be doing. You think about whatever anybody's beliefs are about the Bible. There's a story in there that's really amazing, and that is the creation story. When Adam and Eve are walking through the garden, and the fall happens, and all the things. Again, whatever that means to you, but when they're after they had eaten the fruit, and God is walking through the garden looking for them, He's like, "Where are you? Where are you?" And they step out, and they have fig leaves on. And God's like, what's up? What's up with the fig leaves? And they says, we were naked. We're naked. And this is the operative word that in this whole story. God says, who told you you were naked? And that's shame. That is shame. That is telling you that you're something different than what you were designed to be. And so, a lot of I've been, got off bipolar meds. There's been so many things that I have looked outside of myself to find something that I didn't have to deal with, these dang emotions, these things that were just like driving me crazy, I thought. And, I was on bipolar meds for 10 years and got introduced to another technique and, the stuff that I do with my clients now. And I remember that moment when they were talking about this technique. I'm sitting there, I'm sweating profusely, I'm white as a ghost, the pages are sticking to my hands, because I knew in that moment my life was going to radically change, and I had to let go of a lot of old ideas that used to serve me. And it was just like, holy cow, here we go. And from that is recognizing that familiarity is devastating to discovery. It's devastating. And we like to hold on to these old ideas, but we need to understand that we're the ones that created them. We're the ones that created them, and these beliefs have thresholds, and that we can break through them. It's no different than once upon a time you thought you were 16. You believed you were 16. Then you were 21, and then, whatever. All of these beliefs are a lot more malleable than what we believe, but it's getting in touch to what we value. That is what shifted my life. Was I didn't value me. Boom, I valued my sister. And I tried to stay clean for a number of years because of her, because of what I'd done. And I needed to prove everybody I wasn't this loser I thought I was. But when I valued who I was and made the decision I want a better quality of life, the option to drink and use was never, ever an option again. And it was about me learning to value who I was. And that's, there's a lot of cool things that are happening just because people are taking on. Our greatest relationship is within our head.
Love that. This is such a great conversation, Jeff. I really just really love it. It's so pertinent for the emotional eaters experience, and that idea of valuing ourselves is everything, because so much of the time people are trying to lose weight just to look good, not realizing that the reason they have gained weight in the first place is because that lack of self-worth, and lack of regard for our bodies and ourselves, and unless we start to have regard for our bodies and ourselves, an ephemeral diet is not going to last, and it's not going to make us feel better, and we'll be back to eating in no time, and so that real, rock solid decision to value ourselves is really so crucial to making that change in whatever behaviors we need to make.
Yeah, and another thing that I would just love to leave your audience with that's really big to understand is that we are so indoctrinated with this duality thinking, which is it's either or. You either succeed or you're a failure. You're either in or you're out. And it's a very immature, infantile way of looking at things, because how we give ourselves feedback when we're going through this process of growing has a huge impact on how fast we accelerate through it, right? And so we take these opportunities. It's amazing what happened to us as a child. We take that and turn it into 100 times worse than what the original
right.
event was, because of what we keep telling ourselves. And then that just perpetuates the whole shame thing and just beating ourselves up over and over. But it's understanding that things don't happen overnight. It's see, a lot of people think that the biggest choices we make in our lives, or the most impactful things that we choose in our lives, are the biggest things. Like, who am I going to marry? What job am I going to do? What house am I going to buy? But it's the tiny incremental micro choices that we make that shape the courses of our lives. Is that we play these stories in our heads, and our behavior needs to be aligned with that. So if I'm beating myself up, I'm going to act in a way that aligns with that, so that it perpetuates that whole thing. So learning how to punish the punishment and rewarding what it is that's aligned with who our truth is. Our truth isn't to destroy ourselves. I mean, we can all agree on that. That is not our truth. We are creators. We're designed in the image of God. We're to create, not destroy. And and looking at, I teach people that we have 4 bodies. We have our physical body, we have our mental body, we have our emotional body, we have our spiritual body. Each one of these have an immunity around them. And if I am And darkness is always looking for that crack of how do I get past their immune system. It's understanding that, we don't catch germs. They get through our immune system. It's because of a weak immune system is why we get sick. It's not, germs are everywhere, right? But it's also, physically we know that, but it's also the same emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. What thoughts am I entertaining and dancing with inside of my head? Who said that you weren't magnificent? Who said that you can't do anything that you desire to do? And see, the other part that we get real attached to is this story we have around, our 5 best friends, our environment. It's just like when I gave up, when I got off bipolar meds, I knew my psychiatrist ended up being a really good friend of mine. And I knew that I would probably terminate that friendship. And I had to really exclude myself from a lot of other people that had been conditioned to believe one of the side effects for bipolar medication is you're going to want to get off of it. I mean, it's like,
okay.
Whoa. I'm not a doctor, not encouraging anything. I'm not, but it's just understanding of really getting in touch with every single person listening to this show has the potential of changing this world if they really wanted to step into it. And anything that is opposed to that is a lie. And we want to say we're honest, integrous people, but we have taken on lies that absolutely destroy our lives. And it's really getting in and putting people into our lives. I mean, there was a time in my life when all I had was coaches that were speaking into my life just because of going through that transition of maturing and growing up. And I was like, God, man, I need a friend. But now, it's having to go through that metamorphic process to where coming from the caterpillar to a butterfly. Once you become the butterfly, you don't ever go back. And to encourage your listeners is, learn to love yourself. Because who can you trust? Who can you really, really, really trust if you don't trust yourself? How can you allow somebody to truly love you? And how can you allow somebody to be intimate? I'm talking at all levels. How can you allow them to be intimate with you if you're not intimate with yourself? To really, really cherish who you are. There's no other person on this planet like you, ever has been or ever will be. You're an amazing human being. And just own that and go through the uncomfortableness. People think it's noble to beat ourselves up, but they think it's arrogant to talk highly of ourselves. And I get it. It's a difference between being in love with yourself and loving yourself, but it's you're amazing. We're all amazing and capable of doing amazing things in our lives. And like you said, I believe to this day I chose this path so that I could go through it of being beaten down and learning what it means to reclaim my power to share and give hope to other people.
That's awesome. Good, Jeff. You go, Jeff. You go, Jeff, go.
Go, Jeff. But it affects people like you. I mean, you're an amazing woman, and you yourself are doing amazing things, but it's as a result of you stepping into your story and walking through it.
It's so true. So true. And it's really... I love what you just talked about, of surrounding ourselves with people who will echo the real divine inside of us. I mean, if we listen to our heads, jabber on about what, losers we are, obviously that's not who we need to listen to. But deep down in our very essence is that still small voice that is telling us the truth, and is protecting us and guiding us and, helping us up level. It's just that so much of the time we don't trust it. Like you said, we don't trust that voice because it's small and because it doesn't echo what maybe some of the other people that are around us are saying. We will disregard it, and that leads to overeating. I mean, that's when we don't listen to that voice inside. We will stifle it and snuff it out with food, and other things. So it's really important that we begin to tap in and listen, and that's how we will find our way. But I love that you talked about surrounding ourselves with people who will echo the truth of who we are, and I've had to do that, and it's not easy, and sometimes it does require, moving on from relationships that aren't healthy for us. And that just are giving us the old messages. And we have to be, if we truly mean to transform our lives, it will take making some tough choices, from time to time. And we can't be all things to all people. And surrounding ourselves with people that, relationships that are tired and worn and are not serving us, has to be evaluated, and we have to move on. So I've done that, in the past, when I was first really going through my own metamorphosis. I had to do that, and I don't regret it at all. And sometimes I've come back around to be friendly with people I had to move on from. I just had to find my footing. I had to find who I really was, and I needed to surround myself with people who could show me that. And that's so, so important. And then once I was strong in my footing, then I could circle back and maybe be of service to the people that I was perhaps, feeling as though I couldn't coexist with. I was able to be of service to maybe bring some light and to that relationship. And, thanks to Facebook, I've reconnected with people that I, was out of touch with for decades, and so it's just that I had to know who I was and stand firm in who I was. Otherwise, I was doomed, basically. That's the truth.
Right. Yeah. And what you were saying is, and this is a question that, if I can leave your listeners with something that really started unlocking some things for me, because we get so attached to our stories, whatever it is, we get so attached to this identity, and the more we invest into it, the bigger it becomes, and on and on. But is really asking ourselves, how is this behavior serving me? How is this behavior serving me? And a lot of people it's not serving me because it's giving me X result. And it's like, we wouldn't do it if it didn't serve us, and the negativity will continue until we figure out how it is serving us. And it's giving ourselves grace of understand. We have a society that just says, do not get in touch with who you are. I mean, that is what Facebook, it is what, not so much, well, the people I have on Facebook are pretty mature and awakened, but the TV that, you think about the word network programming, right? We have just been hammered and indoctrinated with be shallow, be superficial, don't get in touch with who you are, rely on, somebody else is going to take care of you kind of mentality. And we've really got to get in touch with, it's freedom. How did this one person say it? Freedom is from eternal vigilance, and freedom is a responsibility. And if we want to experience this thing called freedom that people talk about, it takes looking in the mirror and saying, who do I see? Who do I see here? And why do I see this person the way I see in that way? And what is the truth of who I really am? And acknowledge it. And anybody that's listening right now, I just want to say, you are a child of God. Period. End of story. That's what you are. And anything that you're telling yourself that's opposed to that is a lie. And the lie makes us weak and puts us in unresourceful states. And when we're unresourceful states, we do unhealthy things. It's like I tell my clients, you go to the store hungry, you're going to buy stuff that's not healthy for you. And that's the same thing as being in unresourceful states of what are we constantly feeding our mind? Are we worried? Are we stressed out? Are we beating ourselves up? Are we, just a lot of stuff? And what are our habits that continually keep us to acting out? And it's addiction. We're all addicted. I mean, we get addicted to thoughts, behaviors, whatever. But the addiction, when it comes to a point of becoming obsessive, it's because it's a manifestation of an unmet emotional need. And last year, I had a most amazing thing. I don't know if I shared this with you before or not, but last year I had the most amazing experience. I need to back up a little bit to put this in. We got time? This is a pretty amazing story.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So back when I first got clean, I was I was helping this guy cater weddings, and it was a pretty big wedding, and we're doing the whole rehearsal party and stuff, and it came time for a toast. The dad gets up and gives this amazing speech on love. I mean, it was just breathtaking. All his daughters were crying. It was not a dry eye in the house. And my throat's swelling up, and I was like, holy cow, I didn't know how to hold myself back. Well, the next day, something happened to me, reflecting on it, and I just kind of got this sadness. And I was just like, what is this all about? So I go see my therapist on Monday morning, And I'm telling him about this story, and I was all happy about my new insight. And he's sitting there shaking his head, and I'm like, dude, what's up, man? I'm telling you this huge insight, blah, blah, blah. And what the insight was is I'll never have a dad like this. That was my insight. And there was a sadness about that with me. And he's just sitting there shaking his head, and I'm like, what's up, dude? Why are you shaking your head? And he says, Jeff, you don't get it. You get to be that dad. And it was just a huge paradigm shift for me. Well, I was like, okay, cool. Well, I have a stepson, but I have never had children. But last summer, I went out and I did a lot of deep work, a lot of hypnotic work, and just spent a whole 10 days out there just doing a lot of stuff. And at the end of it, I was over 20 hours in trance. I mean, I live this stuff. He said, I want you to just lie on that bed, and I want you to just kind of let this stuff integrate. And I just started weeping and weeping and weeping and weeping of just saying, I'm finally free. I'm finally free. And I heard God's voice say, this is what I meant. You get to be that dad to you.
Beautiful.
You to be that. And that's the journey for us, to unravel the things so that we learn how to love ourselves. You know, it's like looking at a puppy. We all love well, most people, not all. Most people love a puppy. And when we look at that puppy, we have this incredible feeling come over us. And here's my question. Where does that feeling come from? Where does it come from? Nobody jumped in our head and told us this is what it means to love. To me, that is God saying, this isn't even close to how I feel about you. Yeah. Right. And just really getting in touch with that is, you know, we bought into so much crap that just destroys us. And, you know, it's why we have amazing people in our lives like you. And I appreciate you and your friendship and stuff like that, because it's amazing what you're doing. And I love it.
Well, right back at you. It's so good to hear you. And I just, it's always inspiring to hear your stories and your energy and your real loosed for life. And so I appreciate you, Jeff. So thank you so much. Tell everybody the name of your 2 best-selling books and how they can reach you. And we'll also put a link in the show notes. Sure.
You can find me on Facebook. My fan page is Facebook.com/Jeff Faldalen. Got the Potential Zone podcast. And then my one book is The Roadmap to Your Fullest Potential, and the other one is Creating Acres of Diamonds for Experts, getting you to step full potential. Yeah.
Beautiful. Sorry, I kind of botched your name at the beginning of the show.
That's all good. So I'm not used to it.
It's like podcast hosting 101. Know how to pronounce the guest name. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Much love to you, and thank you for just bringing your brilliance to the show.
Likewise. Thank you, Tricia. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody, for being here.
If you enjoyed this show and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.